is the North American service broadcasting on 17.70, 15.42, 12.05.
Are you a worshiper of the devil?
What have you done to his eyes?
The next time you're frightened in the dark, don't scream.
They are not what they claim to be.
You're listening to Radio.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh my God, we're back. We're back.
We're back.
We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back again. We're back again for more.
MUFON.
MUFON. LUFON. MUFON.
MUFON and LUFON?
Yeah.
Do you think they make LUFON loofahs?
No, I don't think so.
MUFON muffins?
I don't think a MUFON member has ever seen a loofah.
Yikes. Offensive. Dude, I would be a MUFON member. I'd be sick as fuck.
I know, me too. Oh, thank you for coming back. It's Radio Grave.
Welcome to Radio Grave.
I'm here with Dom.
I'm here with Amber.
And we're back for Gary Sudbrink Mystery Calls Part 2. But more like...
Part MUFON.
Part MUFON. Part Bill and Tom Sudbrink's Big Adventure.
Extraterrestrial adventure.
Extraterrestrial adventure.
I think to sum up the previous part, dude's experiencing strange phone calls, but his family has seen UFOs.
Yes.
And that's kind of where we left off is with Bill and Tom.
Right.
Going to go investigate the South Haven Park UFO crash.
Yes. Well, they were in West Virginia. They had that experience. They took it to MUFON, and then their UFO sighting experience. Yeah.
In West Virginia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we ended off with the UFO crash, the South Haven Park UFO crash.
Yes.
And Bill and Tom Sudbrink are like there for it because it happened in Long Island. And they're a part of LUFON, the Long Island UFO network. So they're there, ready to go. So let's just jump right into that. South Haven Park UFO crash. The most detailed testimony of the South Haven Park UFO crash was first submitted to LUFON by a witness named Mr. Knowles from Mastic Beach, Long Island. His testimony is the best for this whole incident. So, he states that on November 24th, 1992, he was heading home from work around 7 p.m., driving eastbound on Sunrise Highway when he noticed, quote, an unusual tubular object on the south side of the highway.
Tubular like radical?
Tubular like radical.
Oh, shit. What shape was it?
Like a tube.
Oh.
Mr. Knowles described the object as having two bright blue lights on both ends of the tube with a white light in the middle. And the object seemed to have been composed of a, quote, dull metallic gray texture.
Okay.
He claimed to witness the object make a sharp right turn and then flew across to the northern side of the highway. It suddenly began to tumble end over end, descending into the wooded area of South Haven Park. Mr. Knowles pulled over and exited his vehicle just in time to witness the impact of the craft.
Ooh.
Upon said impact, a powerful white beam of light emitted from the vicinity, shooting straight up into the sky.
Damn, that's how aliens coom?
Coom?
Yeah, is that how aliens coom?
Yeah, I wouldn't
know. They
know.
make bright white light?
I wouldn't know.
I don't know, you seem pretty invested in aliens.
You shut.
Sorry. So that's how an alien comes?
Yeah.
Go on.
Other motorists had stopped to observe the catastrophe as well, and many witnesses claimed the white light, quote, turned the night sky into daylight.
Whoa.
Like, the first thing I thought was an atomic bomb.
Ah.
Like,
that could make sense.
I would have been tripping.
Oh, I would have freaked the fuck out.
Oh, I would have been, I guess regardless, yeah.
Something crashes and then just a huge, like, beam of light comes out and the sky is, like, white at night.
Everything turns white.
I would have to assume that is, like, a bomb.
I would assume I was about to die. Yeah. So only moments later, Knowles would watch the white light become consumed by an amber hue, indicating that a fire had erupted and was becoming more and more fierce by the second. Mr. Knowles left the area quickly and was convinced he had witnessed a UFO crash. He was unsure of what else it could have been. The whole event was undeniably otherworldly. which I don't blame him. When I read that, I was like, damn, he was quick to jump to that conclusion. Then I realized he was driving and there was a UFO flying over his car and with lights in the sky. And then it started tumbling down into
And crashed.
the air. And he was like, wow. Yeah. He was like, that's definitely what I saw.
Not an unreasonable conclusion.
No. So as he approached the William Floyd Parkway exit 56, Mr. Knowles observed a formation of 4 large black military helicopters heading in the direction of where the craft had crashed. This is interesting to me because it's literally not very long after. It's like maybe 15 minutes at the most, probably way less than that, because he got back into his car and he went home. He was like, I'm not going to stick around. He assumed that the helicopters were military due to the lack of visible markings or insignias, not indicating whether they were fire, rescue, or police aircraft. When Mr. Knowles arrived at his home, he immediately turned on the TV expecting to see breaking news coverage for an unidentified aircraft crash, but he was surprised to find that there wasn't anything being reported at all. He asked his brother-in-law to drive with him back to the area where he had witnessed the crash to see what exactly was going on. 25 minutes later, upon their arrival, Mr. Knowles reported a military roadblock had been placed on the William Floyd Parkway and civilian traffic was being detoured. Just like the black unmarked helicopters, Mr. Knowles noted that the military personnel present were also dressed in all black jumpsuits and uniforms without any markings or insignias.
Since you know a lot about UFO instances and incidences, have you heard of this type of military personnel showing up to sites, like unmarked helicopters or like black jumpsuit personnel?
I have heard about unmarked aircraft, unmarked vehicles, but the jumpsuits and the military garb that's all in black with no insignias, I felt that I had never like heard something like that before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as well versed as you are, but I haven't heard of that.
Right. They weren't wearing suits.
Yeah, they weren't like uniformed exactly either.
He specifically,
it was just jumpsuits.
Yeah, he specifically said military. He knew that the helicopters were military because there's a big difference between what military helicopters look like and fire rescue and
I'm guessing it
police.
looked tactical.
Yes. Tactical gear, tactical people. Tactical people.
Okay, that's just interesting to me.
Right. And it actually kind of gets even more interesting. So it's also noted in the journal that Mr. Knowles watched 5 New York State police vehicles arrive at the scene, but were promptly stopped at the roadblock, denied access, and turned around. And then they headed back the way that they came.
So it is outside
their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, you are not allowed in here.
Right. And the New York State PD denied this claim, but allegedly a confidential yet reliable source from the aforementioned police unit confirmed the story with a very detailed testimony. No, I was an officer. I was there. We got turned around. We weren't allowed to enter, and it was very weird. So Mr. Knowles and his brother-in-law were determined to move forward. So they were able to find a secret detour which led them up Girard Road.
Girard Way?
Girard Way Road.
Oh, hell yeah. I live there.
In my thoughts, in his thoughts.
In
Girard's thoughts. And I live there in his thoughts.
You live in Girard's thoughts?
He doesn't know it, but oh well.
That's how he came up with Umbrella Academy. It was you.
How? Okay. So... While on Girard Road, the 2 men claimed they could see a raging fire about 300 yards into the park. Mr. Knowles said that the flames were so high that they were, quote, licking the very top of the tree line, and he recalled the overwhelmingly strong odor of burning chemicals. In his own words, he said it smelt like a burnt insulation.
Interesting.
It's like very specific.
Yeah.
Another motorist named Bob Harrison of Brookhaven Hamlet reported he had seen a UFO as well. Mr. Harrison was traveling east on Sunrise around 7 p.m. when he observed an oval-shaped object north of the Brookhaven town dump traveling south. He described the craft as looking, quote, non-conventional.
Gay. It looked a little
gay.
I don't. You can't see it. I was doing a limp wrist.
I was gonna say I want to make a UFO, like fo.
UFO?
I don't know. It's a bad joke.
UFO what I mean?
UFO what I mean. It was a gay UFO. Okay, so
the tubular one was straight. That's why
which
it's
is so
tubular.
funny because I feel like the tubular one would be gay.
Why? Because it's shaped like a dick?
Well, you can be gay and not have a dick.
Yeah.
Anyway. He described the craft as looking non-conventional. Basically, he's saying it's not like a normal aircraft. And
yes.
Yes.
It doesn't have wings. It's not a helicopter or a plane.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was an oval. And according to Mr. Harrison, the UFO was leaving a green ionizing trail behind as it traveled towards the edge of the horizon. Bob Harrison did not observe the crash landing of the other craft, nor did he experience the bright light blast, but his testimony is equally as important. There were not one, but two credible witnesses who saw UFOs in the area around South Haven Park between 7 p.m. and 7:15 p.m. on the day of the crash, both from different perspectives.
Why is Bob Harrison credible?
Bob Harrison's testimony is credible because of its detail and because of how it lines up with the other testimonies that they received.
Got it. Okay.
And then also, I've seen people bring up that the two UFOs are not the same.
That was my thought.
The theory is that one was taking down the other.
Oh.
Yeah.
UFO battle.
Yeah.
Shit.
That's kind of the theory, is that one was taking down the other and was successful.
The secret war right below the surface.
Of the surface of what?
Our awareness.
Oh, fuck.
Right below our sight.
Wow.
Hey, it's true. It's true.
It's above us. It's out of our reach.
Literally.
We literally are just watching it happen. We're totally helpless. Who knows? They could have.
UFOs.
Who knows? The UFO that crashed could have been the baddies.
Baddies like bad bitches, like thick queens that slay?
No, like baddies like destroy the human race.
Oh.
And the oval green fart UFO might be the goodies who are like, oh, we're just going to poke and prod and test on you.
What if it's the opposite? We're fucked.
That's fucked.
If you enjoy our content, please rate, review, and consider becoming a patron by visiting patreon.com/radiograve. You can also support us with a one-time donation by visiting buymeacoffee.com/radiograve. Your patronage and support helps us continue to create content for you. You can stay up to date with us by following our Instagram account, Radio Grave Podcast. Thank you for listening. LIUFON immediately began their investigation of the South Haven Park UFO crash just days after the event. Over the course of weeks leading into the new year of 1993, LIUFON investigators, researchers, and ufology enthusiasts would come together to compile a plethora of data and evidence of the crash. They would also collect a multitude of testimonies from the residents in and around the South Haven Park area, as well as credible personnel who were involved on site. The following notes from said investigation would be published in the 1993 LIUFON UFO Update, Volume 3, Number 7. On the day of the crash, extensive vehicular traffic and detours were documented in the surrounding area. Locals and motorists reported there were multiple roadblocks being guarded by armed officers, as well as other officials in nondescript uniforms. These officers would also be sighted in and around the wooded areas of the park and along the highway. Residents on River Road claim to have heard and witnessed multiple fire trucks traveling in and out of the park and the surrounding area well into the night and early morning. Multiple sightings of large black helicopters flying over neighborhoods as well as strange vehicles were reported for several hours on the night of the crash. These sightings would continue on for weeks after. The park was closed for several days, but county officials would deny this claim at first. These officials would then backtrack and report they had closed the park for duck hunting season.
Which makes like no sense.
Yeah, what? Who's hunting ducks out in the park? Well, once the park was reopened, LIUFON investigators found evidence of equipment in the park described as similar to equipment from Brookhaven Hamlet Fire Department. Said equipment was never specified any further other than being firefighter related. So that could be really anything.
Right.
Firefighter related? Like, what is that?
I don't know. And that was another thing that was kind of irritating about the report, is that it's very
Vague.
very vague, where it's like there was equipment found that seemed to be from this fire department and it was fire department related. It's like, bitch, what? Like, was it a hose? Was it like helmet? Like, I don't even know what's from what is firefighter related equipment. I would just think a hose, right?
I mean, they use other equipment. There's like pieces of their fire truck.
True. I don't know. There's
helmets.
Maybe they didn't even know and they were just saying it's firefighter related.
That's what I am assuming.
Yeah.
I think they're, because if there's equipment found and there was a fire, they're going to be like, oh, it was firefighter stuff.
Right.
From the firefighters.
Right. So I don't know what that's all about, but that's what's in LIUFON.
Roads leading into the north side of the park had been widened, with evidence of the transportation of heavy machinery and construction equipment using the paths. Trees were cut down or removed altogether in some areas, with visual evidence of tire tracks and flattened, damaged ground from the vehicles.
Yeah, that's hard to cover up.
Yeah. And there were other abnormalities. There were signs of reversed magnetic polarity that would be documented by an electronic engineer using a magnetometer near the fencing along River Road and Girard Way Road. Consistent readings by the engineer would continue for months, documenting the phenomena, noting the strange readings suggested an exposure to a South Pole magnetic field.
Right.
Basically, on a compass, the red north point of the needle would be reversed and pointing south, no longer responding to the magnetic north.
Right, which is
very fucking strange.
An anomaly.
I would say it is an anomaly. Levels of radiation were detected in the northwest side of the park. Detections came in 6-second bursts, reading between 0.05 to 0.30 milliroentgens with each spike. When converted to millirems, it is 0.046 to 0.27 with each spike. Low levels of both man-made and naturally occurring radiation is present at all times. The average American receives around 610 millirems a year, which is 1.69 millirems a day. A 3-hour flight on a plane is equivalent to about 1 millirem.
Right.
The radiation levels documented in the park were not significant whatsoever, but the consistent 6-second pulse spikes are said to have been abnormal.
When they were writing about the radiation documentation in their report, they did not specify whether it was high or low. And I think that when you write anything about any radiation being detected to someone who doesn't know anything about it, like for instance me,
right.
When I first read it, I was like, well, what does that mean? Is it higher or low? Well, if they're mentioning it, it must mean that it's high.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I did some research, I realized like it's not significant whatsoever. It's actually so insignificant that it's like low.
Yeah,
it's considered low. It's like nothing.
But the consistent pulses are what's strange.
Right. And it's like usually it's consistent. So that's the only thing that's weird.
Yeah, they're not huge spikes, but they're spikes in the environment.
Right.
The evidence of the radioactive remnants were documented and reported to authorities, but these authorities would later on refuse to comment on the reports of said radioactive remnants.
Probably because they weren't remnants that were significant, so TBH.
2BH?
2BH. They were like, yeah, this doesn't matter, and they were like, you're covering this up!
That's me. I just want to uncover stuff.
Yeah.
So along with the data that was collected from the site, there were nearby reports of other unexplained events. Some residents reported feeling strange magnetic pulses and electricity in the air for days to weeks after the incident. Locals reported having electrical problems on the night of the crash, and for weeks, even months after. Light bulbs would burn out randomly, and even after replacing them, they would continue to burn out over and over again. Others reported light bulbs exploding on their own as well. Cable, radio, and landline phone signals were irregular and would go out for periods of time without a cause and could not be serviced. Home appliances like stoves, microwaves, and refrigerators would inexplicably deteriorate or break regardless of the age or overall condition. Car batteries were reported to be drained or completely dead without explanation. So in the month after the crash, on December 29th, 1992, an unnamed Pentecostal minister's 1984 Mercury Marquis would burst into flames when he attempted to start the vehicle. The minister would mention to the officers who responded to the fire that he believed the event was suspicious and possibly otherworldly, to quote him. This statement would cause the minister to be taken into police custody. While in custody, the minister would again state he believed the car fire was possibly related to the UFO crash in South Haven Park. The minister would promptly be transferred to the Stony Brook Psychiatric Hospital, where he would be interrogated and threatened by police officers from Suffolk County Police Department, SCPD. He would ultimately be coerced into signing a document stating he was prohibited from ever speaking publicly or privately about the UFO crash or the car fire. In 1993, the minister would file a lawsuit against SCPD, suing for abuse of power and coercion. Although it isn't clear, it's inferred that he won. Very fucking weird.
Yeah. Somehow he was passed along, ended up in the psychiatric hospital, and was being abused by these police officers, telling him that he didn't know he was talking about, that nothing ever happened, and he shouldn't talk about anything, and they'll know if he does talk.
Well, and it looks better for them on paper. They could really put any report down. As far as police can say, they could say, this guy's car caught on fire, so we took him in.
Right.
And then he was saying crazy stuff, so we took him to the asylum, and then he signed a paper that said he was cured and wouldn't say crazy things anymore. So that's a pretty easy cover-up. Though when you hear it like this, in this context, it's kind of like, what the fuck are you doing?
Not great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with them being like, it's duck hunting season. It's like, what are you doing? You couldn't be doing something more suspicious than what you're doing right now.
Duck hunting?
Yeah.
Podcasting?
I'm so sus.
What are you doing?
Sussy baka.
Ew, don't ever.
They're among us.
So this experience by the minister wasn't the only incident of threatening and menacing from authorities. Residents reported weeks of unwarranted visits from police advising them to not speak publicly or privately about the incident from November 24th. Authorities would dismiss claims of the event being extraterrestrial and would threaten and menace locals who disagreed. Residents would also report an increased presence of police vehicles as well as unmarked vehicles in their neighborhoods. Some residents claimed they felt as if they were being monitored or watched for weeks after the event. LIUFON members would be harassed and sometimes unlawfully detained by SCPD while attempting to pass out informative literature and collect testimonies from locals in regards to the UFO crash. Federal, state, and local fire departments all denied involvement and claimed to have no records or documentation on file for a fire incident at South Haven Park on November 24, 1992. An anonymous firefighter who was called to the scene claimed to have been present with instructions to extinguish an object that had fallen from the sky and crashed in South Haven Park, and that individuals involved were prohibited to speak of the events by federal agents. A report was released exposing that a county-wide alert sounded by the SCPD for all units to use landlines to receive further instructions for emergency mobilization, and to only use landlines from there on out.
Yeah, they were definitely trying to hide something.
Speaks of shady shite.
They're super shady shite. They're the shadiest. Like, no radios because people can interfere with radios. Mm-hmm. So only use landlines. Just go out and harass and intimidate whoever you can. Be sure that you're in this neighborhood so you can watch people to be sure they're not speaking to each other even about it. Like, it's very suspicious. And they didn't even do it well on top of that. So there's a detail from the South Haven UFO crash investigation that was conducted by LIUFON that is a really important piece to this overall puzzle of why this is so important to the Gary Sudbrink story. Not only because his father and his uncle were involved, but because their involvement was really close to ground zero.
Okay.
So John Ford, the founder and chairman of LIUFON, as well as the lead investigator for the South Haven Park UFO crash, would end up receiving an unexpected package with a return address only listed as Rocky Point, New York. It was rumored to have come from an analyst from the Defense Information Systems Agency branch of the DoD. Inside the package was an unmarked, beaten-up VHS tape. The tape supposedly featured the UFO crash site, all shot from an aerial view. It was reported the footage showed what appeared to be a metal craft with a rippled and torn apart surface. It also showed something that appeared to be a figure, maybe an officer or medical personnel, carrying a strange humanoid body in front of the craft.
Ooh.
The tape was immediately taken to be examined by 2 LIUFON members who specialized in analyzing photographs and video evidence of unexplained phenomena. These members were able to enhance the clarity of the footage just slightly, and with the film enhanced, they were able to successfully pull single-frame photographs from the tape to better capture the depictions of the supposed craft and humanoid figure. Interestingly enough, one of these analysts was a man named Preston Nichols, best known as being the progenitor of the Montauk Project conspiracy.
Ooh.
And
Buzzword.
we'll come back to that. Because of the damages to the tape and potato quality footage.
Is that a technical term?
Yeah.
Potato quality?
Yeah.
They're like, in the LIUFON report, they're like,
Pretty
unfortunately,
potato.
the footage is potato level.
Potato quality. Deep fried. Potato.
This VHS tape deep fried as fuck.
Literally. So the tape had potato quality footage. And the photograph stills of blurry figures were pretty unconvincing, and the tape's authenticity was immediately questioned. Ford, however, believed the tape to be 100% genuine, and for good reason. The smoking gun was right there on the tape. It was recorded on November 25th, the day after the UFO crash. At the beginning of the tape, there are 4 figures present. John Ford, a LIUFON investigator named Brian Levin, and Bill and Tom Sudbrink.
They're them boys.
They're them boys. They're here. They're involved. The footage shows the 4 men. This is great. This is my favorite fucking thing. The footage shows the 4 men situating the video camera onto a remote control airplane.
Hell yeah.
And once strapped, the airplane takes off on its mission. The plane flies over the crash site, capturing an aerial view of the wreckage. Likely due to the jerry-rigged setup of this prehistoric drone, the plane began to malfunction and spiral out of control, causing it to plummet down towards the earth for its own crash landing. People are like, we don't think that that's genuine footage. But then it's like Bill and Tom Sudbrink like taping the fucking
The
tape
camera
recorder
to
the plane, and John Ford is like standing there like, yeah, like thumbs up. And then some rando named Brian is just like standing off in the corner. I have no idea what his purpose is, but they're all there like doing it. And then it goes up in the air, and then it captures the footage, and then it falls down to the ground. How could you fake that?
I mean, you could, but I don't think they had the stuff for it.
I don't think they did either. They had to tape it to an airplane.
Yeah.
A toy airplane, which didn't even work.
It kind of worked.
But it died.
They got their shot.
Oh my God. According to the alleged anonymous analyst from the DISA, the tape was discovered by firefighter personnel on the scene of the crash site. Once the tape's existence was known, it was confiscated and removed from the scene. The tape was then passed through different hands of government officials before being sent to the aforementioned DISA analyst to be examined.
Mm-hmm.
So less than 2 months later, Gary Sudbrink would accompany his father, Bill Sudbrink, to give a VHS tape to Coleman von Keviczky, the most prominent ufologist in the world. It is never quite clear if Bill was sharing the VHS tape footage from the South Haven Park UFO crash with von Keviczky, or if Bill was sharing his evidence from his own sighting when driving home from West Virginia. But what we do know is this. Only hours after a meeting with von Keviczky, Gary Sudbrink would receive the first of 4 cryptic phone calls from an unknown source claiming he was being impersonated, doubled, and needed to keep an eye on the skies.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Damn.
I know.
I don't know what to say about that.
I know. Isn't that
kind of
a lot?
I never knew that they were really involved in UFO stuff. I knew that they were enthusiasts. I knew that they
were investigators.
Yeah, and I knew they had an interest, but I didn't know they were involved in like a big, kind of a very well-known, well-documented UFO incident.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's like way deeper. It's not just, we believe in UFOs or we saw UFOs one time. It's a lot deeper than that. It's kind of crazy.
It's evident that Gary's mystery calls are not random in nature, but are related to a multitude of strange phenomena and events surrounding Gary's family and friends. Not only are the calls topical, but they are specific. Although Bill and Tom Sudbrink were active members of LUFON at the time, and were very involved in the UFO world, they were never requested or spoken to directly. Gary is the only person the voice addresses, making him the center of this mysterious case. Remember, at the time of the mystery calls, Gary was the only true skeptic in the room. Sometime between 1993 and 1995, Bill and Gary Sudbrink would get in touch with Linda Moulton Howe, a well-known ufologist and investigative journalist. Howe was a regular guest on the infamous radio show Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Woo!
Art Bell, Art Bell. With the help of Linda Howe, Bill Sudbrink was able to speak on an episode of Coast to Coast and spoke extensively about Gary's strange phone calls, personal experiences, and other UFO information. Sometime after the episode aired, Linda Howe would reach out to the Sudbrinks to give them some very interesting information. She told them that out of all the listeners who heard the interview with Bill Sudbrink on the air, only one person called into the Coast to Coast hotline in regard to the episode. The caller claimed they had also experienced something extremely similar to Gary's incident. Supposedly, the caller divulged many details, but Linda Howe never disclosed any other information to the Sudbrinks. Not long after Bill Sudbrink's interview with Coast to Coast AM, both Bill and Tom Sudbrink would cut ties with LUFON after an unbelievable controversy.
Yeah.
Of which I am currently unaware, but I am excited to hear.
Oh my God.
The fall of LUFON.
The fall of LUFON. So, John Ford, the chairman and founder of LUFON, the guy who also was duct taping the tape to the airplane and then received the tape from the DOD, was considered to be an eccentric, intelligent, and compassionate man who loved his mother, animals, and ufology. So it'd be a huge shock to the LUFON community, as well as the entire city of New York, when John Ford was arrested on June 13th, 1996, for conspiracy to murder.
Oh, what?
What do you think
Murder?
I was going to say?
I was thinking, like, I don't know. He had an affair. He's a pedophile. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's going to
no.
murder somebody?
He's murder on his mind.
Okay.
A wired undercover FBI agent would record Ford conspiring the murders of local politicians and President Clinton,
What?
as well as alluding he was in possession of radioactive materials.
Wait, who has materials?
John Ford.
So he says, I'm going to kill the president and I have radioactive material.
Yes.
He's just like me for real.
In the audio that was captured by the FBI agent, he says it's in a 3-inch lead container and it's leaking 5 Rontgens per hour.
That's a lot, right?
I think so.
Isn't that like quite a bit?
I don't remember.
It sounds like it is.
It sounds like a lot.
I don't think you're supposed to have any Rontgens leaking.
Yeah. So in a plot intended for fatal results, Ford had devised a plan to murder the politicians by radium poisoning.
Yo.
There was evidence that Ford had planned to place the radioactive materials in the politicians' cars, food, and toothpaste.
Yo.
Although radium exposure makes a person incredibly sick, it would have taken decades to actually kill any of Ford's victims. He doesn't have a very good understanding of how radioactive materials works. I feel like in the LUFON journal, there was a lot of concentration on the radioactive remnants that were found in the park, but there were really no remnants there. Same thing where he's like, oh, I'm going to poison these people and they're going to die. He would say like he was going to break into their cars and put it underneath their seats in their vehicles so that every day they would drive to work and like be exposed and it would kill them. He wanted to put it in their toothpaste and in their food. Like,
so eventually it would work. But
it would make
you
them
said what, it
sick.
would take decades to die?
Yeah, it would take them decades to actually die. It wouldn't be immediate. So Ford believed that the death of these politicians was justified and the only way to end a government-controlled UFO cover-up.
Base.
That same night, a SWAT team was sent to Ford's Bellport home where they did actually find hot radioactive sources encased in a lead box in the back of his pickup truck. So he was saying he wasn't just
talking
barking
at his ass.
No, he was ready to commit.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, he wasn't just saying it. He was premeditating. One of the local politicians he wanted to kill was one that he just really disagreed with, and they had run against each other.
Oh,
at one point.
He is a politician?
And he like hated him.
Damn
Yeah,
it.
he like hated him. He was like Italian. the other guy and the other politician that he lost to, and he was like, do you think he eats Italian food? Do you think I could put radium in his meatballs? Like, literally.
Jesus Christ,
he's like says all
sir.
this shit when he's being recorded. So anyways, how did John Ford go from taping video cameras to toy planes with the Sudbrink brothers to plotting a trio of assassinations? And it's actually incredibly tragic. Ford had been a well-liked and respected bailiff for decades and loved his job. But after the South Haven Park UFO crash, Ford was forced to leave work on a disability pension due to an injury to his back. After being forced to retire, Ford began to grow very volatile and paranoid. Over the course of just a few years, Ford would end up falling down the proverbial rabbit hole of UFO and government conspiracy. Then, when his mother passed away in 1995, Ford's mental health began to spiral out of control, and he began to show a changed behavior which reflected someone who is inconsolably angry. Ford would go on to investigate another supposed UFO crash in Long Island after the death of his mother. And Ford would begin to stir up public hysteria, claiming the government used, quote, particle beam weaponry to shoot down a UFO, killing 17 innocent extraterrestrial beings and igniting the Long Island forest fires in August of 1995. And a very bizarre coincidence, John Ford's good friend and trusted partner in LIUFON, Preston Nichols, who we mentioned before, would be watching a live news report on the 1995 blazing forest fires when he would witness something that changed his life forever. During the broadcast, a firefighter would appear walking behind the reporter. Nichols would be dumbfounded by the unknown firefighter's uncanny likeness to himself. Nichols believed this firefighter was none other but his younger self traveling through time to help extinguish the fires caused by the UFO crash.
Oh.
This event would lead Preston Nichols to dedicate his life to the research of time travel, government experimentation, and psychological warfare, and eventually the creation of the Montauk Project conspiracy.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a fucking web.
Yeah.
And I'm caught.
And I'm caught,
Go
baby.
on. I'm caught as fuck.
And the Montauk Project conspiracy is really cool. It is very complicated.
Yeah.
But it's insane that Preston Nichols is involved in this.
Yeah.
It's just so strange that Gary Sudbrink, his experiences and the calls seem so obscure and not related to anything, are actually part of something huge.
Right.
Something huge. So, a month before his arrest, John Ford told his friend Steve Iavarone, who is the vice president of LIUFON, that an unfamiliar car near Ford's driveway had money hidden in the gas tank. And he told Steve, quote, "We can't get it out because there's a special detonating device and the car will explode."
Okay.
Steve decided to check out the car.
Careful, Steve.
Careful, Steve. Steve decided to check out the car, and he examined it thoroughly and even jumped around on top of it.
Oh,
The vehicle did not blow up,
that's good.
but Ford was still convinced someone was out to get him.
What?
He
So a month before he gets arrested, he's like, yo, there's money in this gas tank, but there's a bomb. We can't get the
Yes, like someone's trying to trick him, but it's like created in his mind.
money. Yeah.
He's full delusional, full volatile. And Steve Iavarone is like, okay, I'll come over and check it out. And he's like, look, John, like there's nothing in, like, look, I'm jumping on top of this car. I don't know who this car belongs to. It's in your driveway. It's probably your car. Like,
And he's like, they're trying to trick me.
literally.
Jesus
So,
Christ.
I know, it's really sad. A mental health evaluation would prove that Ford was suffering from extreme delusions. According to the psychiatrist's evaluation, Ford revealed that he believed he was a rogue CIA agent who survived 5 assassination attempts by the KGB.
Okay.
He claimed the Ebola virus and AIDS were created to destroy the populations of sub-Saharan Africa. That's a pretty common conspiracy that floats around with a lot of UFO high delusion conspiracy believers. He also fully believed that most politicians were aware of UFOs and extraterrestrials and knew their intent, but were keeping the information from the public.
Not hard to believe, in my opinion. I think anyone who believes in aliens does believe that.
Yeah. I mean, we know that that's a fact now.
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
So Ford was declared obviously not fit to stand trial.
What? Why, obviously? He's fine. He's just like me for real.
Soy face. He's just like me. So Ford would be held in the Mid-Hudson Psychiatric Center for a multitude of years. And actually in 2012, he would be sentenced to 13 years for his murder conspiracy plots.
Wow, so they waited a long time to sentence him.
He wasn't fit for trial.
Oh, yeah. So they had to get him well enough to go on trial.
Yeah, they had to wait.
Damn.
I mean, 2012, he was arrested in 1996. I mean, it's a long
It's a hot
time
minute.
to be in a psychiatric hospital. And this is someone who was very normal for most of his life. You know, he was a bailiff. He was really, really close with his mother. He dated. I think he got married, but it never really worked out. He was always described as being just like the smartest, like sweetest guy.
But eccentric, I'm sure.
Eccentric. Yeah. And he like loved animals. Just a genuinely good guy. But then his mother died and he got caught. He got caught in the web. It's very sad that this happened to John Ford. And I'm glad that he didn't kill those people, even though they are politicians and he hated them. I don't think he would have been successful because of the radium thing, but still.
It wouldn't have worked.
But still, he's lost his entire life. Now we're going to just kind of get into the theories of Gary Sudbrink's calls.
Yeah, back to Gary.
The
original subject of...
Yeah, this whole thing. So who was calling Gary? How is this happening? What's with the voice? All of that. The most common theory in this case is the belief that a tape recorder was used to relay messages over the phone to Gary. Right.
And I agree with this. This is believed to be the most likely because of the nature of the voice, what it sounds like, the repetitive speech, lack of interaction or ability to respond, and the slow, low tone of voice are all characteristics of a tape recording that was being played slowed down.
Right.
In the background of the phone calls, there's a lot of interference that comes through. It's often noted that there's a whirring sound that occurs multiple times throughout. I'll play it right here. This sound has led some to believe that this is the sound of a tape recorder fast-forwarding or rewinding. The most important question is, if it is a tape recorder, whose voice is it relaying?
Yeah.
And I know a little bit about this, and it's a little fucking weird to me.
Ooh.
So, time and time again, skeptics will claim that it was Gary himself. This theory suggests that Gary had recorded himself and then played the tape on the other end of a telephone on his own. In an effort to debunk this theory, web sleuths clipped a piece of the audio from the first call and attempted to restore the audio back to its original state. The intention of this experiment was to see if Gary's voice and UV's unaltered voice were alike in any way.
I'll tell you who it is.
Hello?
Yeah. Do you want to speak to him?
Is Gary Sudbrink there?
Steven, if you're playing games, they're going to kick your ass.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
Huh?
You are being impersonated by the other voice.
Yeah, this is you, Steven, you idiot.
So the word Texas was isolated and clipped from both the unidentified voice and Gary from the phone call. These two voices were developed into a spectrograph where visual representation of the audio's frequencies could be compared to one another for similarities. Once the results were analyzed, it was determined the two voices only shared a 29% similarity, making them an impossible match.
Right.
Was the unidentified voice someone that Gary could have known, or was it just a stranger? No matter what, it should be noted that it's obviously clear that even if the phone calls were a hoax or a prank, Gary and his family were not in on the joke. Gary's family took events like these very seriously, and the idea that they would just fake it doesn't add up.
Right.
I have a weird theory.
Yes.
And I've had this theory from the beginning, since I heard the sped up tape voice for the first time.
Yeah.
I think it is double Gary.
You think it's double Gary?
I think it's the Gary that called Mike that sounded stuffy. I think it's the Gary that was driving on the road.
Double Gary.
I think it's
Doppelgary.
Stuffy doppelgary, which is what they called me in grad school. But I think that's what it was. Because there are many mentions throughout regarding this case that talks about doubles. Seeing the doubles and the Montauk Project. and the phone calls to Mike. I'm not sure why it would be recorded and slowed down, maybe to keep Gary from panicking. Because if he heard his own voice, he'd be like, who the fuck is this? Steven, are you impersonating me?
Right.
Like, I don't exactly know why, but sped up, it sounds like Gary to me. It sounds like Gary enough that they had to put it, like through a spectrograph and be like,
Right.
okay, is this actually Gary? No, it's not.
But
a doppelganger Gary
doesn't have to sound exactly the same.
Yeah, doesn't have to match up because he sounds stuffy. He sounds different.
And Mike,
but it's
Mike
Gary's
did,
voice.
And Mike did say that it didn't sound like him. He thought it was him at first, and then he's like, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm just sick."
Right.
My thing is that I feel like UV's voice is so different because I feel like it has a different accent.
Really?
That it's from a different
region
of the U.S. I'm thinking Midwest.
Really? I feel like it sounds the same.
I don't think so. That's my opinion, though.
Huh.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
When are you going to be back from Texas? It sounds just like him to me.
Play
it doesn't sound Midwestern.
You were being impersonated by the other voice.
So we just took a second after we fucking argued. We took a second to listen to the calls again because I wanted to prove that it sounds like Gary. It's the same accent. It's a different cadence. It's a little jerky. But what do you think? Do you think it's the same accent now that we've listened to it again?
I think it's similar, but I don't think that it's him.
Whatever.
Whatever. I can't say if it's doppelganger.
I believe in doppelgary. I'm going to get a presidential election t-shirt that says stuffy doppelgary.
Okay. Can I have one too?
24. No, because you don't believe in him. Shut up. Shut up. It's Gary. It's doppelgary and shut up.
It's doppelgary. So it could be. I'm cool with saying yes. I think it could be. And I know, although it's a little silly, I do want to touch on the theory of an alien or robot maybe calling Gary, because I just don't want to discount it.
I don't think it's silly at all.
Well,
I think a lot of the theories that have been presented in response to the calls, I don't think they're silly at all. I think they're totally reasonable.
Well, okay.
But go on. You say your silly theory.
I think it's
that I
silly.
believe.
Well, many hold out hope, like Dom, that this could be possible, but it's not very likely.
Say that to my face. Turn over in the coffin and say that to my face.
I don't think it's very likely that it was a robot or an intergalactic person calling Gary.
Tell me why.
I think it comes straight down to personal belief and what can be interpreted as, quote, human and, quote, non-human speech. The argument is that UV sounds as if they are trying to imitate English, speaking nonsensically and ignoring grammar. The question, so how long are you going to be back from Texas, is considered to be enough evidence to prove that UV is not human, but something pretending to be. Poor grammar or not, this theory remains to be debated by me, even though the argument is kind of silly. And this is my argument.
Okay.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas is an elliptical sentence.
Okay.
An elliptical sentence removes a word or multiple words from a sentence in order to reduce redundancy in casual conversation. These words are not replaced by differing vocabulary, but are replaced by unspoken or unmentioned conversational context or knowledge that both participants are already aware of. So how long are you going to be back from Texas removes the repetitive language in regards to Gary's location, while UV simultaneously reveals their own location. What UV is really trying to say is, so how long are you going to be back in Long Island from Texas? But this is repetitive because UV knows they don't have to specify Gary's location. It's common knowledge between them. Not only that, but UV reveals their own location by speaking with familiarity. They ask Gary how long he was going to be back, not how long he was going to be gone or there, implying that Gary has returned to Long Island and UV is also in the vicinity. An overcomplicated answer to a simple question, but it is clear that UV is a human or some sort of version of one.
I don't think that proves anything.
Okay.
No, because while the sentence, kind of like you said, while the sentence doesn't grammatically make sense, whatever, the fact that it was worded in a different way, like when I first heard these calls, until I heard him say that doesn't make sense, I was like, why doesn't it make sense?
Exactly.
I understood.
Right. Well, and that's part of my argument too, is that UV represents the ability to converse in natural and casual human speech. Kind of. Unlike the rigid mechanical speech of like a robot or the formal and pragmatic speech of an intergalactic being, in my opinion, from what I've heard and read of how extraterrestrials speak to humans. Other obvious indicators of human speech are present too, because although UV is monotone, there are still instances of fluctuation in tone when posing a question. He says, "Is Gary Sudbrink there?"
Is Gary Sudbrink there?
The fluctuation is also present when UV says, "Hello?"
Hello?
So when you say hello as a question, it's not necessarily a greeting, but it is another way to communicate, is anyone there? Or is anyone here? If UV were to utter hello and a flat affectation, this speech would align more with something non-human. So voice and Texas are both consistently drawn out with a hissing S sound. That's reminiscent of human speech.
Voice. Texas.
UV also has a slip in their speech.
Gary Sudbrink.
This stutter is very much human error and would not be present in non-human speech. Obviously, an intergalactic being or a robot wouldn't trip over their own words.
So, as you're like pressing on with your alleged proof,
Oh my God.
I think I wasn't clear with what I was saying. I don't think it's a robot, first of all.
Okay.
I think it is a recording for sure because
Right.
it's, replayed and replayed. But when I'm saying intergalactic being, I'm talking about doppelgangers. Gary is a human being, technically.
When I'm talking about intergalactic being,
You're
I'm
talking about just like gray aliens, yeah.
Yes.
So I don't believe that. I believe that classic aliens are part of it.
Right.
They're making doppelgangers and recording doppelganger speech
Yes.
and playing it back.
Well, why would...
But I think it's a
why would-
human, technically a human, Gary, talking.
Why would an intergalactic person need to create a doppelganger and then force them to record on a shitty tape recorder and then call on a landline phone?
How else are they going to contact him?
They do
What's a less scary way of contacting him?
This isn't scary.
It's way less scary than just walking up to him or abducting him.
I'm not going to argue... I'm not going to argue that it's not doppelganger because I do think that it might be doppelganger. But I don't think that... I don't know. Basically, what I'm trying to say is it's not robots or aliens that are calling on a landline phone.
Speaking to him.
Speaking to him in a human voice. It very
fair.
well could be doppelganger.
Okay.
Because it is human. And the thing is that doppelganger's voice isn't that similar to Gary's voice, but they are kind of the same.
Yeah.
And doppelganger wouldn't be a robot or an intergalactic person's voice.
He's a Gary.
He's a Gary. So he's going to speak as a human does.
Right.
People always want to say, oh, it's something pretending to be human. The elliptical sentence kind of proves that
It is a human.
it is a human because of how casual the conversation is.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very slangy, I guess you'd say.
When I heard it too, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that sentence.
Yeah.
I totally 100% understood.
Yeah, like back home from Texas.
Yes.
How long are you going to be back home from Texas?
How long are you going to be back from Texas?
Yeah.
Because I think that maybe Gary is assuming that the call is coming from
Within the house.
inside the house. I think he thinks that it's coming from Texas. I think he thinks that someone's calling him from elsewhere.
Yeah.
I don't think he realizes that maybe the caller is coming from inside the house.
Yeah, he thinks, if someone is calling, asking for him,
Yeah.
then it's someone from Texas where he lives.
Exactly.
But alas, Doppelgangers was behind you all along.
Exactly.
We'll just switch gears. How about that, since you don't want to argue with me?
Oh, I'm going to argue more.
You said that you don't want to argue about Doppelganger.
Well, because no, I don't want to argue about doppelganger, but I'm going to tell you right now that there is a pretty close contender to what UV could be, and that's a man in black. I think it might be a man in black, but maybe I don't. I don't know.
Well, let's get to it. So, who or what are the MIB, or Men in Black? So, John Keel, a renowned pioneer in ufology, was one of the many to come forward publicly about his bizarre interactions with entities that he would later call the Men in Black. In 1967, while researching a variety of UFO cases as an investigatory journalist, Keel would report that at least 50 individual witnesses from an array of said cases would report being visited by strange officials in black suits. These MIB officials would discourage them from speaking out about their experiences, as well as forcing them to surrender any evidence that had been collected from these events. The MIB are known to be intimidating and extremely bizarre, threatening retaliation if witnesses, abductees, or investigators ever came forward or shared their testimonies. The most famous and well-known example of an MIB encounter is one experienced by psychiatrist and ufologist Dr. Herbert Hopkins. For reference, Dr. Hopkins specialized in hypnotic regression, working mostly with patients who suffered from PTSD. In 1976, one of Dr. Hopkins' patients would
Wait, can you try again?
What?
Just start over.
One of Dr. Hopkins' patients would recount a terrifying experience of an alien...
I'm sorry, you're saying Dr. Hopkins.
Doctor?
Yeah.
I think I'm saying doctor.
No, you're saying doctor.
In 1976, Maybe I am. In 1976, one of Dr. Hopkins' patients would recount a terrifying experience of alien abduction during a hypnosis session. After this session, Dr. Hopkins would encounter a strange man at his home who claimed to be a UFO investigator. Dr. Hopkins would describe the man as tall, pale, and very strange. He wore a black suit and appeared to have no body hair.
Oof.
I mean, that literally sounds like all the goth girls I've gone after. I don't...
Tall,
pale, very
and
strange, black suit, no body hair. Is that weird? This unidentified man asked Dr. Hopkins if he would be willing to speak with him about his patient's hypnotism session and possible alien abduction. Dr. Hopkins would hesitantly agree. The two men would awkwardly discuss the hypnosis session. During this conversation, the unidentified man would suddenly brush his gloved hand up against his mouth. This unintentional brush caused a weird red smear to appear streaked across his face. The man was wearing lipstick. Under the now smeared lipstick, Dr. Hopkins would observe that the man didn't appear to have any lips at all, and the lipstick had been a disguise. Disturbed, Dr. Hopkins would begin to realize that the man was wearing makeup all over his face, and noted he was beginning to look sickly. The man demanded Dr. Hopkins to hand over all of his case notes regarding the patient, but the doctor refused. It was then that the stranger began to exhibit robotic movements and speech that was slowed with long pauses in between words. The man eventually stated that his, quote, energy was low and promptly left Dr. Hopkins' home.
Energy low. Shutting down.
Computer enhance?
Computer
Cannot
enhance.
Energy low.
Energy low.
As the doctor watched the man from his window, he observed a black vehicle pull up to the curb. The car's headlights were off, and the driver was not visible, almost like the car was driving itself. The figure climbed into the vehicle, drove away, and was never seen again. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Hopkins experienced many issues with his electrical devices in his home, especially his telephone. When the doctor finally requested maintenance for the telephone issues, the serviceman would tell him that his landline had been tampered with and suggested there was evidence which indicated his phone line was being tapped. So, in some interviews that Gary Sudbrink participated in, he usually mentions that he believes it is likely the calls were Men in Black related, and his parents' phone lines were being tapped. Dozens of others believe this theory as well, stating the strange robotic speech, repetitive cryptic messages, and the altered voice to disguise the identity of the caller are all characteristics observed in MIB encounters. It's theorized the persistent whirring and static over the calls are sounds of the voice malfunctioning or running low on power, not the rewinding or fast-forwarding of a tape recorder. Gary would say he believed the two men from the airport to be in cahoots with the MIB. Even though the two men did not fit the description of the classic Men in Black, not all Men in Black are as peculiar looking as the one Dr. Hopkins encountered. It has been documented in some MIB encounters that agents appear as civilians, and are very much so human, given the common belief of many that MIB agents are not actually people. The only true discrepancy in this theory is the behavior of the voice. UV only asks questions that are related to Gary's trip, not about his father and uncle's involvement with UFOs or Gary's own strange experiences. All of UV's statements are either instructions, advice, or warnings to protect Gary from government interference. MIB are not known to show this kind of behavior. MIB are often persistent, menacing, and threaten the victim. In no way do they attempt to guide or help the victim. So why were Gary's contacts with MIB so benevolent? A good example of how MIB usually behave would be the encounters reported by Steve Iavarone, the vice president of LIUFON, after his involvement in the South Haven UFO crash investigation. He claimed to have experienced menacing phone calls left on his voicemail in a computer-altered or robotic voice. Iavarone claimed that he knew his phone lines were being tapped and suspected his home was being surveilled and broken into when he wasn't present. Iavarone would also claim to have caught strange men looking through his windows and following him around in public. It's called gang stalking. Get with it?
Get with it.
It's real. These events align more with MIB encounters than Gary's phone calls, but no one can be certain where the calls came from or who dialed the phone.
Right. So the MIB theory is a strong theory, but MIB do not protect you.
Yeah.
That is not their purpose. That is not something that they do. They are not here to protect you.
They protect information.
They protect information.
Right.
They're super demanding. They're super creepy. They fucking freak people out. And that's what they do. There was a hotel manager who took a video of a UFO that he saw in broad daylight outside of the hotel, super briefly. The next day, he had off. He wasn't at the hotel, and 2 men in black came to his hotel asking for him. I'm looking for so-and-so. And the worker that was there was like, he's not here. And they were like, well, when is he going to be back? We need to speak with him. And they eventually left. These 2 men were caught on CCTV camera in the hotel lobby. Mm-hmm. And the guy who encountered them called his manager and left him a voicemail that is still available online. And in the voicemail, he basically says, there were 2 guys in here. They were tall. They were weird. They didn't have any eyebrows. They were wearing suits and they were asking for you. And they were really, really fucking weird, basically. Mm-hmm. That's what the MIB do.
Yeah.
They are not concerned about your safety, telling you to look towards the skies, telling you to look towards Orion. You're in danger. Watch out for the government. They do not give a fuck. They're there to protect information. They are neutral.
What if it's Preston Nichols on the phone?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Could be.
Preston Nichols from the future.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Same level of possibility as it being doppelganger. It's really the same thing.
I don't think it's Men in Black.
I don't either. They don't act like that.
They don't.
Yeah.
And Men in Black have no bounds. They are not just in America. Mm-hmm. They are not connected to government. They are not connected to nations. They are not connected to anything.
Yeah.
Gary Sudbrink even today kind of talks about how he thinks that it was Men in Black.
Well, Gary Sudbrink wasn't really into aliens and things.
But he is now, but he's still so level-headed. He's just a pharmacist in Texas.
For a skeptic, I think that would be easier to believe than a doppelganger.
Yeah.
You know, a skeptic would be like, oh, it's these, maybe not other entities, but it's these agents.
Right.
Who are attempting to cover up information.
And those agents could have been the ones from the airport.
Right.
Because I don't want to discount those people either.
Yeah.
Because they very well could have been Men in Black, but they very well could have been involved with Preston Nichols. They could have been the ones who were calling. It could have been them. It could have been the blonde man who literally flew from Texas to Long Island in the same plane as him that he never saw again.
Yeah.
It's out of this world. I don't know.
Literally.
Out
of this world.
From start to finish, Gary Sudbrink's story is downright one of the most perplexing cases in the UFO paranormal world. Not only does it have a variety of strange occurrences, but it also goes deeper down the rabbit hole than people realize.
Absolutely.
Doppelgangers, phantom helicopters, voices calling from beyond all seem to have ties to the abundance of concentrated UFO and extraterrestrial phenomena in Long Island at the time, as well as in the Sudbrinks' lives. And over the years, like I said, Gary Sudbrink has never changed his story and has since researched more into the UFO world to try and come up with the answer to the big question. What does it all mean? In my opinion, Gary Sudbrink's story is very much real. But it's up to you, the listener, to decide what you would like to believe.
And you should decide to believe what we believe, which is that this is fucking real.
Yeah. The calls did happen, and they are unexplained. When it comes to topics like this that get really, really out there, that touch on a lot of things that are conspiratorial, that are kind of out of touch, I want to just come forward with a disclaimer. Over the years, the UFO paranormal community has been flooded by spiritualists, conspiracy theorists, and paranoid doomsday preppers who shamelessly exploit and grift the community with ridiculous ideology, unsubstantiated claims, and elaborate hoaxes. These people are often platformed by self-serving, fear-mongering public personalities who brainwash naive and gullible civilians, taking advantage of those who are often looking for a purpose in life or something to believe in. Because of this, there have been many cults and conspiracy groups organized over the years who have wreaked havoc in the UFO paranormal world as well as in the world of skeptics. These groups have caused and continue to cause irreversible harm to vulnerable believers and damage the reputation of the UFO paranormal community. Conspiracies like Flat Earth, reptilian government takeover, QAnon pedophile rings and mole people, invasion of psychic vampire enemies. These are just a few examples of the many absurd and outrageously dangerous groups that have slithered their way into our society. There have been many tragedies related to these kinds of beliefs. The 1997 Heaven's Gate mass suicide incident, the suicide ascension doctrination created by the cult leader Sherry Shriner, or even the tragic murders of Tylee Ryan and Joshua Vallow, who were murdered by their religious zealot mother, Lori Vallow, and her simp newlywed husband, Chad Daybell, for being possessed by zombies and having bad energies. And as of writing this document, Lori Vallow has been sentenced to life in prison without parole, and she cried as she told the entire court that she had no other choice. Because of their radicalism, the societal image of the modern-day believer is usually perceived as someone who is unhinged and delusional. In turn, this deters people from coming forward with their stories of having personal experiences of strange encounters. These people end up missing out on receiving any sort of support for fear of being ridiculed. Their voices are often drowned out by faux spiritualist abduction fakers who use falsified abduction experiences to gain a following to build their platform, almost always for monetary gain and power. As we close out this episode on the Gary Sudbrink Mystery Calls, we want to remind you that there are real people out there who have real experiences and live real lives. Whether you decide to believe them is up to you. But here on our platform, we believe victims. Healthy skepticism is important, but who's not to say that you are being impersonated by the other voice?
At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere. It is speculated that these objects are of extraterrestrial origin. The broadcast will quiet at this time for your safety. Continue to carry out the following instructions.
Radio Grave is hosted by Amber Byland and Dominique Makasuya. Music courtesy of AOA Music, Carl Casey at White Bat Audio, and intro music by Simon Bickbyler. Audio mixing and editing by Amber Byland. Logo and cover art by Dominique Makasuya. All other media and sound clips used are protected under fair use and are for the purpose of criticism, commentary, news reporting, education, and research. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.